And then we need to talk about Georgia State Trooper. Right, so that is how long it took Georgia State Trooper Jake Thompson to shoot unarmed 60-year-old Julian Lewis after stopping him. So fast that Thompson wasn't even able to finish saying, "Hey, get your hands up," before opening fire. And now, a new investigation and footage from the incident has called Thompson's entire story and defense into question, which is notable because, I mean, all of this happened back in August of 2020, right, which notably is around the same time that the officers involved in George Floyd's death were being held accountable. And footage from this incident shows that Thompson had been trying to pull Lewis over for 5 minutes over a broken taillight, and reportedly, they reached speeds of up to 65 miles per hour, with eventually Lewis putting his left hand out the window, pointing to a dirt road that he wanted to turn on. Once on that road, Thompson managed to initiate a pit maneuver which forced Lewis's car into a ditch, which is when Thompson then jumps out, and within 1.6 seconds, he shoots Lewis in the head, killing him on the spot. And then when other officers responded to the scene, Thompson told them, quote, "I had to shoot this man, and Jesus Christ, he almost ran me over," with him claiming that Lewis revved his car at him and he was turning the wheel like he was gonna run him over. So he was saying, this shooting, it was to defend myself. However, despite this story and this claim, Thompson eventually was arrested and charged with murder. And after being denied bail, he spent nearly 100 days in jail. Just sitting there wondering, is the prosecutor going to pursue charges? But then suddenly everything just gets dropped, and it left so many people going, well, why? Everything sounds so sketchy. And what we saw is that the Associated Press ended up getting their hands on a bunch of the dash cam footage along with evidence that sheds light on the situation. But it also has left a number of questions. Right, so for starters, we publicly learned that Thompson's excuse for shooting Lewis, it doesn't seem to add up. Right, in the original investigation, it showed that after crashing, the battery on Lewis's car, it was disconnected and the entire battery was dismounted. And testing showing that if the battery was disconnected, the engine would stop immediately. Right, so it's just not possible for Lewis to have revved up at a high rate of speed like Thompson claimed. Although in the footage, there is something that maybe sounds like an engine revving, but no one's sure what it is. And on top of that, we now know that the tire marks from the scene clearly show that Lewis's front tires were pointed away from the trooper's car. And the AP spoke to experts about the new footage, and they were not happy with Thompson, with one former Boca Raton police chief saying this guy just came out shooting, and saying that Lewis didn't have remotely sufficient time to respond. Right, and all of that probably has you asking, well, then why did the charges get dropped? And actually, we now have a better idea of why. See, the prosecutors brought the evidence before a grand jury, and the grand jury decided not to proceed, which is generally pretty shocking because a grand jury will usually indict anyone on anything, right? Because the bar is very, very low there. Well, it turns out that in Georgia, police officers have a privilege that no one else gets. They are allowed to defend themselves in front of a grand jury. And it appears that this grand jury bought Thompson's initial story. And since no new evidence was brought to the prosecutors, they declined to go for another indictment. And then the situation gets even messier, right? Because despite state officials dropping charges, Thompson was still looking at the US Department of Justice possibly going after him. But even there, he ended up getting an unusual deal. They ended up making an agreement with him to not prosecute him if he just agreed to not go into law enforcement ever again, which obviously the Lewis family not happy about. Right? I mean, the closest thing they got to justice is the $4.8 million settlement with the state of Georgia. Money doesn't bring people back. Money doesn't hold accountable the person that took a loved one from you. And all of this, unfortunately, just serves as yet another reminder that despite the push for more accountability, despite the push for body cams, there's still so many hurdles in place to actually prosecute and get justice.